I really struggled with this 4 in a row challenge for myself, so much so that I initially gave up partway through. So, if you've been watching my channel, you may have seen a few videos before I was working on the show with Ann Livingston, where I was trying to improve my watercolor skills. And I developed this exercise where I would do 4 of something in a row. For this particular one, I was following an online YouTube tutorial for painting water lilies, and I was just struggling with it. I couldn't get the colors the way I wanted, and I made a few mistakes. So let's take a look at what I was doing wrong. This is partially for you, but also a lot for me because this is how I use my YouTube videos. I use them to review how I'm doing and analyze myself, and sometimes I do watch them back. So anyway, with this particular challenge, I started off painting here. I didn't really like the shading or the way the colors were laying down. I was struggling with it a lot. I tried to compensate with the black outlines around the water lilies. When I came up through art journaling, a lot of the times I would find that if I wasn't happy with my work, I could use this graphic style with the black outline, and it fixed a lot for me. It's not working so much with watercolor and this style of painting. So I did another attempt with another set of colors. Same technical paint palette. I'm using the paint palette here, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But in this case, I liked the shadowing a little bit in the water better. I'm still not loving it. And again, I made the same mistake trying to outline the lily pads. So once again, I came back in a third time. You can see as I'm going that it's getting better. The lines, I'm having more water control or more control with the paintbrush, so the lines are at least getting a little bit thinner when I'm outlining it. The lily pads are starting to have more layers of color. However, I'm still just not loving it. I'm still very frustrated at this point. This was back in February. I don't know if I mentioned that. But there are elements I was okay with. I kind of liked some of the shading in the water. It was starting to at least feel like water with varying depth. I just still wasn't happy. And it was at this point I stopped and I completely gave up. And I went all the way through here before I did it again. So at this point, you can see there's quite a bit of improvement in the way that it looks. This time I did not outline everything. I'm finding with watercolor that I prefer to only outline or highlight parts of areas where I might outline or shade and just give the viewer the ability to fill it in with the eye. I was layering a lot better. I had better water control. I was learning to let it dry. That's another issue that I'm having. I am not really patient. And with watercolor, sometimes you have to let the layers completely dry before you go on with the next layer. The other issue I had was with the paint, and this is where I will argue for good paint, for good watercolor. With a lot of other paints, with acrylics, even when I'm using cheap acrylic, I can sometimes compensate very easily. Maybe this is because I'm more comfortable with it. Probably a person who was skilled with watercolor, more skilled than I was, could have done better, even with a cheap paint. But at this point, the paint was just really fighting me. So much so to the point, it kind of looks like it's really, I don't know what I would say. Like it didn't go down well. It was really blotchy. And I was actually asking myself, am I painting on watercolor paper? And then like, oh yeah, I'm painting on watercolor paper. So this paint was just awful. And I am hoping to definitely improve paint as I use up what I have. I will probably use this palette as a base layer. I did the thing everybody does at some point, and you try Temu or Temu art supplies, and this is one of those. This is I think it's called Simi or Siami art kit. So these paints were just really blotchy and they fought me a lot. I do like the container the paints came in, and I will reuse the container and I will reuse these little paint pans for sure. I loved the brush that came with it. I used this travel brush a lot. And I've heard other artists say that these actually are decent brushes. I just didn't care for the paint. I even liked, this is the book that came with the set. And I really liked this watercolor book. And I would like to get more of these to take out with me because these would fit nicely in my purse. But this argument would be that, especially for someone who is new to watercolor, if you are not using at least a decent student grade paint, you may feel really frustrated. And I was really frustrated with this 4 in a row. I may come back to water lilies again at some point, but you can see here with this painting, opposite it, I'm using the Ohuhu paint here, I believe it is, or is it the Montlart? I think it's the Ohuhu. But it is a student grade paint, and you can see here I had better water control and the painting came out a lot better and it's not blotchy. So I am improving my skill level, but I am really noticing that even within that, the paint does matter. So don't be frustrated like I did, or if you are frustrated, consider just buying a couple of tubes of better paint before you completely give up on watercolor. So I'll share more in this journal later and some of my other 4 in a row. I've got a lot to catch up on for video editing after completing the recent show series Under the Sky online. If you haven't seen that, check it out. I have a playlist for it on my channel. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.